So sorry for the wait. It seems as though my laptop just kind of went haywire on me and the webcam just wasn't working. Uh, Usually this doesn't happen, so I tend to troubleshoot before I start any live. But in this case, I don't know what just happened. Yeah. So for the time being, I will be on my phone and doing the live stream from here. Yeah. Oh, it could be because I was running the streaming software, but I since have closed it, so I don't know why it made my webcam kind of freak out. Yeah. So yes, I am doing the stream from my phone. I'm really sorry for the quality. Can you all still hear me alright? Though, uh, no, I was actually just using my inbuilt webcam, so I am not too sure why that didn't work. Yeah, I don't know. Did this ever happen to anyone? I feel like this is really the first time my webcam has sort of freaked out on me like that. Yeah, it's just turning up as a gray square on my end. So I don't know why it's not working. But in the meantime, I can just chat here while I try to troubleshoot that for a little bit. So thanks for joining me here tonight. So sorry for this technical difficulty. So yes. I am 24 this year. Maybe if I log out and log back in, it will work. Thank you. Uh, oh, thank you for asking me. My day was fine. I still had to do quite a lot of work because I'm working as a substitute teacher now, and this week I had to mark a lot of students' scripts, but I'm not being paid for this week because it's a school holiday. So apparently, on the substitute teacher scheme, I won't get paid for extra work that's on a non-school day. But you know, I still have to mark all these things because the students need their their scripts back. So yeah. So yeah, but how was everyone's day though? I don't know whether y'all have been able to watch my newest video that I posted today. It was a book haul, and it's been a while since I did book hauls. Yeah, I didn't realize that I was actually, you know, I didn't know that I had so many new books in my vicinity until I wanted to film that video. So yeah, okay, so I don't think I'll be able to get my webcam to be working. I'm so sorry about that. Uh, the past few times when I tried it out, it seemed to work. And I'm not sure why it is not working now. So yeah, my webcam just isn't being registered, which is so strange because it is literally my inbuilt web cam. I do actually have this Logitech one, but I feel like the quality was so bad that I just didn't think it would be nice to watch in any sort of way. Yeah. Uh, okay, never mind. I'm just gonna give up on getting my webcam to work. Yeah, so I've been trying to set up my Twitch. I've been trying to set up my Twitch account, but I really think my current setup is not able to handle that amount of stuff happening. So I did do a trial run testing the quality of the stream, but it was pretty bad on Twitch. But I do intend to be able to maybe upgrade my specs a little bit so that I can be on Twitch um, and stream much longer, or at least have a bit more of interaction with everyone. I've sort of been doing live streams casually here and there. Um, yeah, but I don't know why the usual YouTube is not really working for me now on my desktop. So I'm using my phone. So my ability to really interact will be quite compromised. I did actually want to go through a few web pages with everyone and share what I've been learning about eco-anxiety and about climate consciousness. And I had this whole plan to like show everyone the different things that I was searching online. But unfortunately, I don't think I can do that now. Um, but maybe I can just find a way to drop the links in the chat so everyone can still go and look at them. Yeah, I all this is kind of on the ball right now. Uh, okay, so I am going to first of all talk about one book that I've been wanting to sort of go back to, and that is actually a book called A Field Guide to Climate Anxiety. Um, I know that a lot of people in the chat have been talking a lot about like how to handle climate anxiety and how to handle like existential dread and all that. Um, yeah, and I feel like it's been a journey for me as well. I mean, if you talk to me when I was like last year, it I would have been in a very despairing state of mind. And it's only really through a long drawn process that I was able to sort of find a healthier way to relate to issues around me. And one of the books that really helped was this book called A Field Guide to Climate Anxiety. It's written by Sarah Jacket Ray, if I'm not wrong. Uh, yes, so this book is actually written from an educator's point of view, and it's addressed quite specifically to Gen Z. But I feel like you don't have to be Gen Z to feel the same kind of climate anxiety. But I feel like at least this author is pretty clear about the current situation. I mean, it's not looking very great. It seems very bleak. The prospects seem very bleak, and I think this book is really for people who just really need a psychological toolkit going into the future. It doesn't really talk about like climate action per se, but I personally am very invested in the psychological aspects of climate change, mostly because I come from like a humanities, social sciences point of view. I am a very social sciences person, so that's that, and I feel like this is one area that a lot of people don't talk about when we talk about climate discourse. It's really about like the um, psychological sort of consequences of this whole thing. So I really quite strongly recommend this book as an overall kind of very direct how to in terms of like what are the direct steps you can take to sort of handle your eco anxiety. So that is what I would sort of you know show people if they come to me like, okay, I'm really stuck and paralyzed right now with all this climate news. I can't really do anything right now. I would recommend this book first. Yeah, because it is a pretty realistic and practical book. So that's, I would say, very practical application. So some of the notes that I guess I made from this book, it's kind of like understanding different stages of grief when it comes to eco anxiety. So I know that there are many different people who talk about this. And while I was searching online, there was this framework that was taken from where is it? Oh, okay. The five stages of climate grief. It is sort of adapted from the five stages of grief model by, I think this scientist or researcher who actually researches on grief. But the five stages of grief is supposedly denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So this is like very general grief. It's not very specific to climate change. It is very much sort of the general process of grief. But I think Sarah Jacket Ray gives a really good updated version of climate grief, and that is what I see here. I had a whole screenshot for everyone, but now I'm just stuck doing this the old way. Yeah, so I don't know whether I can show this to everyone, but basically it starts off with, oh, you can't see it because it's flipped, right? Oh no. But basically, it kind of adds on to the five stages of grief, but it moves on from acceptance, right? So it starts with idealism that becomes guilt once you understand the circumstances, and then it deep dives into nihilism. But afterwards, there is an element of self care, pleasure, and sort of very kind of everyday joys. Yeah. Oh, so you can see it. Awesome. So this is taken from her book. Yeah. And then sort of from all these small acts, it kind of goes into hope, um, efficacy, and then resilience. So I like this model a lot more than the general stages of grief, because I feel like it's the kind of process that you go through in terms of climate anxiety, eco anxiety, and climate consciousness is really very different from um, general anxiety or any sort of general psychological conditions that we know today. So I did actually study a bit of psychology back in my undergraduate days, and I was a huge psychology nerd. So I had major plans to sort of go into the mental health sector, but I sort of did a detour and moved into more of cultural studies. Um, but it's still a very huge interest of mine, and I do believe that um, mental health aspects of trauma, of like any sort of disruption that we see today, they are often not being treated in a very holistic way in our current mental health models. So this could be sort of okay, a major one is climate, obviously, but there's also about major displacements, the refugee crisis. Um, there's also a lot of political instability that we are experiencing so much more. So this is kind of like, because I did study, okay, like there's this book that I read here. It's convenient for me. Trauma and Recovery by Judith Herman. This is a really old book, and I got it as a secondhand copy from a senior. And this was written during the time when psychologists were only starting to be aware of PTSD, which is post traumatic stress disorder, and seeing those symptoms in war veterans as well as victims of sexual abuse, domestic abuse as well. So the fact is that all these sort of effects or all these sort of symptoms um, come after the initial impact. So um, it's not just about the initial impact, the violence that these people faced, but it's really about yeah, it's really about like how the psychological effects of certain traumatic incidents, we just cannot see the real sort of wide-ranging effects until much later. So I feel like that's kind of where I'm at with regards to mental health and climate change. I don't think we really have a very robust system because we don't even have the systems to sort of treat um, psychological our psychological trauma from even you know um, events from like 10 years ago, etc. So I feel like this is going to be a huge area that will become much more pertinent in the future, and which is why I want to talk about it. I want to talk about eco anxiety and climate consciousness because I feel like we need to be prepared mentally and emotionally for all of these things, not just like in terms of how robust our infrastructure is, but also whether we have the mental capacity or like even the emotional capacity to like not slip into um, a very survivalist or very selfish uh, mode of conduct when things actually strike us. So I don't know. That's where I am right now, and I guess that's kind of like in the hope or efficacy uh, part of Ray's Ray's like diagram. So I definitely used to be like here. I mean, sometimes I'm still there. Like the I think a lot of people that I know are sort of still, stuck in this like in this sort of step where they start to see everything that they used to enjoy being kind of like the ultimate sins. So like maybe someone could have loved eating steak, and then now they know that the meat industry is kind of crazy, and so they stop eating steak, but it kind of robs them of that pleasure, and they start to kind of beat themselves up for all these things that they used to take pleasure in. So I've seen that a lot of times, but I think the next step is to really then find joy in a lot of other things that are a bit more sustainable, or something that is actually much more uh, kind or compassionate, or like just life giving. Um, I guess that is like the next step for people who are in that category of climate grief, etc. So yeah, uh, that is kind of the different stages of climate grief. I guess okay, more of eco anxiety, and I don't know whether you know what. Yeah. So have you? Oh, yes. I don't know. My Wi-Fi just lagged a little bit. I don't know why I'm get running into so many technical issues today. So yeah, I mean, if you all have been listening to me talk for the past few minutes, let me know on which end of the spectrum you're at. Yeah. I think for now I'll stick to YouTube because I just can't seem to figure Twitch out. But you know, I actually feel like Twitch would be a really nice, cozy space to hold live streams. I will want to do that in the future, if I can. Yeah. Have I read Anne Rand? No, I have not read that. Yeah, so how do I practice slow living or degrowth personally? Yeah, I feel like this is gonna be a very general answer. Definitely sort of recalibrating my consumption habits or like my identity as a consumer. Sort of not seeing my worth as being tied to material things is one huge aspect. And as well as degrowth, I feel like a lot of people have given me comments on my ambition video saying that I shouldn't be lazy, or that I shouldn't want to I shouldn't like waste my life away, or that, okay, not waste my life away. I think a lot of people sort of conflated the idea of like me not wanting to pursue a traditionally ambitious life or career trajectory as me wanting to be lazy and living off other people's hard work. But I think there's a huge difference. I feel like we should be ambitious in our own uh, yeah, in our own things. We should be ambitious in our own desires and our own aspirations, and that's what life is about. It's about wanting to you know be yourself as authentically as possible, and being out there and learning about the world and learning about yourself, which is like personal growth. I feel like you can't just kind of pluck the word and put it in all sorts of contexts, but in the specific context of degrowth, I think when we talk about growth as this doctrine, right, or like this very inherent belief, it is about like unsustainable increases or unsustainable growth, and maybe to the like to the maybe detriment of some people, etc., etc. So I would say that I feel like nowadays I do feel a bit helpless sometimes when it comes to like changing the system. But when I think about like history, I think about movements and how change happens over a period of time. It starts with ideological changes. You really have to start to question a lot of things around you, and to question how you have contributed, or you have sort of internalized the systems around you, and understanding which systems work for you and which systems don't work for you. Um, but of course, that's something that I deal with. Like, I'm also struggling a lot with, like, how do I practice an ideology that seems to be in so much conflict with the world I live in. Yes. But in terms of how I practice degrowth personally, it's really about like not seeing my value in terms of productivity, like in terms of like maybe economic productivity, so like how much money can I earn in a month, but rather seeing my own growth as like personal growth, like whether I am satisfied with the new things I've learned, or whether I have sort of felt more like myself in the past few days or weeks, whether I'm dedicating time to things that I truly enjoy. I would say that is how I practice degrowth personally. So yeah, hope that answers your question. Yeah. Oh wow, study break. Hi, thanks for joining during the study break. Uh, Thanks for changing your lifestyle. Yeah. So yes, so I did talk a little bit about climate anxiety in the first few minutes. And I think that this is becoming more and more pertinent. I do see a couple of books being released next year that is specifically about climate anxiety. There's this book called Generation Dread that's by this author. Let me just find it. So it is a newsletter. Uh, I found this newsletter pretty recently, but it's one of the only resources I found that actually very explicitly addresses um, yeah, eco anxiety and the whole psychological aspects of climate justice and climate change and massive, ecological changes and disruptions. Yeah, and I really, really enjoy reading each issue so far. I feel like it's really refreshing to see these perspectives that are like very, very relevant because, I don't know whether, anyone here has really gone for like counseling or like any sort of mental health treatment, but definitely here in Singapore, even seeking treatment for, things that are a lot more known or things that are a lot more that people are much more aware of. So things like maybe anxiety or depression or even just like different sorts of issues or conditions that are much more commonplace. Even seeking treatments for those things can be hugely difficult for a lot of people, not just in terms of like accessibility, because we just don't really have a very robust mental health system, but also in terms of like cost. A lot of people don't seem to um, be able to afford private practice, which private practice tends to be a lot more holistic and they tend to be a lot more catered, much more personalized, but it is priced really high. So a lot of people can't have that, and um, public healthcare with how they do mental health services is still very basic. So I don't really think that there would be therapists that are like climate informed near me at all. And usually when you come to a counselor and you're like, okay, I have anxiety, I have all these issues. Usually what they will have to do first is to do um, DBT. I don't know. Oh, CBT. I don't know whether you all know about CBT, but it's cognitive behavioral therapy, and they'll try to talk you through why certain thoughts are unhealthy for you or maladaptive for you, and they'll try to like basically change your thought processes so that you can adapt to your life better. But the problem with this is that it kind of assumes that your problem isn't really, a major problem or you cannot, it's something that you can solve maybe per se. But when it comes to climate change, you can't really avoid it. It's kind of inevitable. And also, it is um, something that people, if they catastrophize it, it is valid. If people feel a huge sense of despair and loss, it is valid to feel that in the face of climate crisis. So you can't really tell people to think it away, basically. Okay, so thanks for reading Less is More. I really, really enjoyed that book. And that's another book that I also want to kind of reintroduce again in this stream because definitely it is a very optimistic and hopeful book that is very much realistic. I feel very it is grounded in a lot of like justice, like climate justice and social justice framework. So that's really important because climate justice is a social justice issue, and yeah, I just feel like it really ties in how degrowth is really essential to sort of questioning neo-colonialism, like the kind of remnants of imperialism and colonialism, and also building a much more sustainable future. So that book is, I would say, it is pretty powerful in that way, and it's also pretty. I don't think it's too difficult to read. It doesn't really have a lot of academic jargon, so that's what I like about it. Yeah, and thank you. Oh, Daily Restore. Okay, so yeah, so that oh yeah, so the newsletter. So the newsletter, I would say, has been really helpful in articulating the intersections between mental health and yeah, climate anxiety, eco anxiety. Do I go to therapy sessions? So I used to go in my senior year, back when I was still in university. That's because counseling sessions were free for all students, and I really made use of it because I had a lot of I had a lot of anxiety issues back in senior year. It was a really intense. Okay, it was like between third year and fourth year. I had a lot of um, anxiety issues, so I did go for counseling then, and I actually really was so how you say it? I'm really so like lucky to have gotten a counselor that was very inclusive in their approach and was very understanding from a very like queer and inclusive lens, which is super rare to find in Singapore because I came from a liberal arts college, so the school actually really emphasized yeah, these kind of inclusive traits, and I was really glad I was able to have access to that kind of counseling and that kind of guidance. So I used to go then, but since then, which is about a year and a half ago now, I haven't been able to go for any sessions, simply because like I think private practice in Singapore is really too expensive for me. I can't afford it, and also it yeah, I just feel like I don't really trust that the mental health systems here in Singapore can really guide me well in general. Yeah, so I haven't been going. So a lot of self-coping mechanisms I've been trying to find, though I wouldn't say that it's always a good thing to be self-coping. Yeah. Oh, thanks for listening to me. I mean, I'm really glad that there are people who still want to listen to me talk about these topics because it's really, it's, yeah, it's just me talking to the camera, but thank you all for being here. Yeah, it's, it's been really nice to do, it's been really nice to do live streams and actually reacting to all your comments in real time because sometimes when I, you know, go on my channel, there's just a lot of comments in general because yeah, like I had two videos that went viral sort of, and they just garner a lot of comments day to day, so that to the point where logging on and having to scroll through the comments and find those I want to reply to can be pretty draining. So I used to reply to like almost all comments back in the day when my sub count was like two K or something. But yeah, now it's harder for me to find comments and to respond to them. So I really like this. So thanks for listening to me. Yes, I've actually considered writing a newsletter. The issue is I wasn't sure what I would write about because I seem to be writing, as I seem to be making a lot of content about different things. Yeah. Yeah. So I also feel like the video format works a little bit better for me because I tend to be I tend to be really strict to myself when it comes to writing things. Yeah, for no reason. I find it, yeah. But I would love to have a newsletter one day. I feel like that's one of my personal goals, I guess. Soul living means being comfortable with yourself and your position. Yeah, I agree. Uh, Yeah, and also actually slow living kind of what leads me into my next point about coping with eco anxiety. So I want to talk about mindfulness. I know this is a very huge buzzword for a lot of people, and I do think that it's been quite unfairly appropriated by a lot of corporate language. I think you have to be careful. Mindfulness is a concept that stems a lot from Eastern philosophy and Eastern religions and spiritual practice. So I just want to put it out there that yeah, mindfulness and meditation, a lot of it comes from very ancient Asian traditions. Um, but nowadays you can also practice meditation and mindfulness in a way that's a bit more accessible, etc. So for me, I did take a course on mindfulness back in my undergraduate days. So for that course, I had to practice like mindfulness practice like 3 hours a week, and while learning about the sort of psychological, like the clinical trials and everything. And the very interesting thing is that in order to be a mindfulness practitioner, you actually have to attend a lot of mindfulness retreats. So it's pretty interesting because my professor, she was also um, a therapist, and as part of a therapist training, she had to attend multiple mindfulness retreats throughout the year, which was very, very cool because a lot of I would generally perceive like science and medicine as being very reluctant to engage with spiritual practices, but these were therapists who actually felt that it was important to engage consistently with the spiritual practice of mindfulness. So that was very cool to me. And I say that mindfulness is really linked to slow living because mindfulness is about living in the present, and this really helps with climate anxiety because the thing about like eco anxiety or climate anxiety is that it kind of perpetually places you in the future. It sort of places you in sort of like a anticipating crisis. You're just anticipating crisis all the time, which is really, really a very tiring position to be in. Um, Whereas like mindfulness and sort of practicing gratitude for the present really helps, even though you've accepted that crisis is coming. And this is something that the author Sarah Jacob Ray talks as she mentions this as like existential resilience. And this is something that's a really cool concept to me. The idea that you could still be prepared for any potential crisis while being fully in the present and enjoying uh, life's pleasures in the present, uh, which is a very like I would say it's almost like a very liberating perspective to take on. Um, and one book that really helped me with that was Donna Haraway's Stay with the Trouble. Um, it's a whole ideological kind of argument to stay with the trouble, and to go with change rather than to try to mitigate it at every corner, which is really cool and really great. So it's a great book. Let me just share the title with that with everyone. Uh, oh, okay. So there's some questions. Where am I? Oh, wait, is that directed to me? Okay, not me. Okay. Wow. My mom used to always tell me simple living, high thinking. That's a great that's a great like motto to live by. Do you like personal finance? Do you have a plan to retire or semi-retire? Okay, once I graduated, I really had to brush up on personal finance. This is really out of like circumstance because I graduated in the middle of the pandemic, like the first lockdown. So money became a really huge source of anxiety for me. Yeah, so definitely I try to learn as much as I can about personal finance. So budgeting and managing my money, so managing my spending as well. That is really important. As for money, I don't know. I really don't have answers for that. I feel like I'm just doing whatever I can to sort of make sure that I have enough to get by till tomorrow and next week and next month. But I do have enough savings, fortunately, because I did manage to do a few months of a full-time job. Yes, so that was like a few months ago, so I still have a lot of savings from then. So that's okay. But I don't know about retirement plans. I feel like that's something I haven't really been able to consider fully, because my career plans are kind of out of whack now, so I can't really plan in a very long term way. But definitely, I would want to be able to save enough just to get by. Um, yeah. Yeah, and also for me, I think I've already come to a point where my major financial concerns is really having an emergency fund to make sure that I can pay for my loved ones and for my cat. Um, any sort of emergency costs. I just want to feel like I can absorb those costs. So that is like my number one financial goal for now. That's really random, right? Yeah, it becomes kind of difficult when every step fills me with existential dread. I really feel that. I really relate to that. Yeah. Yeah, I actually did see that on the news that El Salvador was making Bitcoin an official currency, which is really interesting. I find that very intriguing. I don't know the full picture of cryptocurrency, uh, but what it seems to me right now, it is sort of like a neutral currency. It is like kind of a bit volatile, but I also know that it isn't very. I don't know, man. I don't think I have that much starting capital to really invest in crypto. I am currently working as a substitute teacher, so this is a short term stint. Yeah. It is a part time gig. So I used to work as a barista for 2 months. So my career has been really weird. I worked as a librarian in the public libraries in Singapore for about half a year, but I ran into a lot of internal issues and I felt like it was kind of a dead end job. So that was bye bye to my sort of ideal dream. But I managed to live out my librarian dreams online. So yay for me. And then I became a barista for about 2 to 3 months, and then now I'm a substitute teacher. But I might want to go back to being a barista and also doing content creating ish. Yeah. So those are my plans roughly. Okay, so oh, yeah, apparently a lot of there's a lot of crypto related scams in Singapore lately. So yeah, that is a real concern. Be careful of the scams, everyone, because it's a lot of money. Yeah, okay, it's true that crypto does use a lot of energy consumption. Uh, I guess I've seen some videos or some articles that talk about how crypto can be made a lot more sustainable with, you know, kind of energy technology. So, sort of switching to solar, etc. But if the scale and the demand for crypto might really outstrip the rate of technological advancements. Um, I don't know about that, but definitely a concern in terms of the energy that it consumes. yeah, so how do I know whether I'm coming online? So yeah, maybe I should make a Discord or something, because I do use Discord, and maybe I should create a group where I do announcements. I feel like I should do weekly live streams so it's a bit more consistent. So maybe I'll just stick to Thursday nights for now, but I will announce that later on my YouTube channel when I can. How do I deal with all the queer phobia in Asia? Dude, it's difficult. It's it's really difficult. And luckily for me, I don't. Okay, it's not really lucky, but I am not too upfront about it, about queerness and all that, and especially for my own sort of identity. I try not to push that too hard, because I know it can be a liability for me, but at the same time, it's also something that perpetuates the phobia, right? So that's really difficult for me as well. I would say, I mean, I've had comments talking about like talking about my identity, like gender identity or sexuality, which is very strange because I usually don't talk about these things on my channel. But I'm glad that so far online I haven't really received any major hate so far. Um, yeah, most of the hate is really just about my short hair. Apparently, having short hair is straying me away from femininity. I don't know. Yeah, so it's so far in my real life, I don't really talk about it because I don't feel safe doing so. But online, I do talk a little bit more about it, and being online does help. It's a lot more of a safe environment because you can remove comments that are hurtful, but also at the same time, people can be a lot more malicious online. So it's a double-edged sword. Yes. Uh, yeah. I don't know. I really don't have answers on how to handle queer phobia. It's just trying to. I hope it's really about, yeah, showing that you are your own person and that people shouldn't have to judge you based on, yeah, you shouldn't have to be judged based on like how you portray yourself, honestly. Yeah, but it's definitely very real, especially in my situation. Yeah. I did film an entire video about my gender identity like last year, but I got really emotional in that video and I decided to scrap it because I just wasn't comfortable posting that. But definitely it has been a very tumultuous journey for me. So yeah, sending love to everyone. I don't really talk about queerness a lot on my channel, but it's definitely an underlying tone. Maybe one day I'll do like a queerness intersection with ecology thing. That'd be really cool because it's a whole field of its own, actually. So yeah. Thanks for all the thanks for all the love in the chat and for liking my short hair. I know a lot of people have complimented my short hair, so thanks for that. I actually cut my hair short when I was like 22 because I started developing eczema on my neck, and keeping long hair was just aggravating it. Yeah. So I wasn't trying to make a statement, but apparently everyone thought that I was. Yeah, so I thought it was really strange. And I really felt a lot more comfortable after I cut my hair. So for most of my life, I did have short hair. As in, I did have long hair, but ever since I cut my hair, then I kept it short, and yeah, I wouldn't go back to long hair. It's just really hot here in Singapore. But eczema still flares up sometimes. Sometimes maybe you know uh when I'm a bit more stressed, or sometimes in Singapore it can get really humid. So that's when it gets worse. Yes, so yeah, I used to dye my hair like really random colors all the time. I was obsessed with dyeing my hair. Um, yeah, I think that's probably one of the reasons why my eczema developed, maybe. Because I was dyeing my hair like crazy back in my undergraduate years. I mean, like everyone did, right? Yeah. So people, okay, tend to be the tolerant and embracing. I do hope that Singapore can go towards that, hopefully soon. But politics here and attitudes here tend to be quite conservative. So I don't really know about how things can change here. In case y'all didn't know, um, yeah, gay sex is still illegal here. Doesn't I don't know. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to have a bit more of an open attitude in Singapore. Yeah, I don't know. Are y'all shocked? It's still criminalized here in Singapore. I mean homosexuality. Yeah. Okay, I guess a lot of people didn't know that. Yeah. Unfortunate, but that's kind of the reality. Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people are hopeful that it will change at any time soon. Oh man, it was recriminalized. That's terrible. What? That sucks. That doesn't make sense. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, but I do think that, like LGBTQ activism in Singapore is still going strong. So, yeah. But generally, political freedoms in Singapore is quite limited. So it's really hard to push for certain civil rights if, there's no strong um, imperative to do so on like a global scale. So far, even if people might push back on Singapore for conservative rules, things don't really change as much. So yeah, yeah. Okay, this is really great. I'm glad to see that there are all these other places where it's there seems to be progress. Yeah, okay, that really sucks that it flip flops like that. It shouldn't do that, by the way. Yeah. So, okay, so are there any other topics about, I guess, like, oh, okay, that's a good question. Definitely. It is a major concern. It is a major debate in Singapore a lot, which is there are a lot of very funny incidences related to this topic in Singapore. So previously, our Prime Minister actually made a speech, like a small speech, saying that Singapore welcomes people of all sexualities and backgrounds to come and work in Singapore. That's a safe place to work in Singapore. There's a lot of benefits, etc. Um, but it is kind of ironic and contradictory because if you're in a gay marriage, that marriage won't be legally recognized in Singapore. So if you bring a partner over, they won't be recognized as your legal spouse. So like that kind of automatically yeah separates you, I guess, legally in the country. And also furthermore, yeah, you can't say that you welcome people of all sexualities if you're literally criminalizing their behavior. So it was quite that speech got a lot of backlash, but of course nothing much happened after that. So there are a lot of, I guess, queer spaces in Singapore, but with the COVID situation, a lot of these spaces, which tend to be nightlife spaces, they are also kind of very strongly regulated. I don't think nightlife is open in Singapore at all. So that's that's kind of a limitation now. What's my take on organizing? I don't really have a very strong take because organizing is just illegal. Organizing is illegal in Singapore. There are many things that are illegal in Singapore, unfortunately. So organizing, I guess like protesting is a huge thing that's illegal. So if you want to organize, it tends to be through very sort of bureaucratic and very centralized ways. Yeah. So I guess everyone is learning about all these things that are illegal in Singapore. So you can't you can't gather illegally. You have to actually get a permit to have a public assembly, and you can only have a public assembly in one place in Singapore, which is an open park. Uh, I think yeah, it's it can house like a few hundred people, but that's the maximum. So queer expression increasingly has been much more open in Singapore, but mostly through independent media. So a lot of it is kind of like, yeah, kind of self-published or independently published. But if you're talking about mainstream media, then not really. Speaker's Corner, right, at Hong Lim Park. So there's only one place that you can talk about political things. Yes. There is a Pride festival called Pink Dot that happens once every year. It does happen at Hong Lim Park at the Speaker's Corner. Yes, I'm not on Twitch Live right now. I have stopped being on Twitch Live because it did not work. Yeah, so Pink Dot is more of a celebration rather than a political protest because you can't be too politically worded. Yeah. I realized that this is kind of like a semi-political education about Singapore. So yeah, so I guess like moving back to the topic of the stream, which is like climate consciousness, I would like to ask everyone, I guess, like yeah, where do you feel like you are on this scale? You know, have you sort of had difficulties kind of managing being climate conscious, or you know, is this something that you're new to, or you know, are there like grassroots activities around you that you are quite inspiring? Yeah, I've been trying to find a lot of inspiration lately, trying to be a bit more building hope or building strategies for the future. That's kind of where I'm at. So reading a lot about ecological ways of being was really helpful for me in terms of sort of questioning my own despair. I think I kind of took a lot of comfort. Uh, yeah, I kind of took a lot of comfort in the fact that you know the world will move on, and you know the world, like the environment and nature, is so beautiful and breathtaking, and you know they will find ways to survive, and you know despite you know how selfish humanity has been, that these living things will find ways to live on. uh, and I find it very heartening. Of course the damage is done, that cannot be undone, but really if we all start to think of ourselves as a bit more in tune with nature, a bit more ecological, I think that would really help a lot. Yeah. Oh no, the recycling thing. Yeah. Yeah, I guess it really depends on your country, like how your country handles sustainability efforts. Yeah, and in Singapore we don't really have a very robust recycling system, which is then again very confusing. Yeah, because we are supposed to be really advanced, but we don't have a lot of these very kind of basic sustainability systems. Yeah. Uh, I'm really glad that you all are doing all these like small actions that will build up, and I'm really glad to hear all these because I feel like it's maybe when we do small things it doesn't really seem to matter, but I feel like because we do it in a community and we do it in a way that affects our sense of self, I think that really cascades into something a lot more. So it's not just the fact that you planted something, but the fact that now because you are able to plant something and care for that something, that you start to see maybe the plants outside or the nature outside in a different way, and you feel a lot more connected to these wild things. So I feel like that is the kind of change that we need. So maybe like stopping, stopping meat eating. So like if you stop eating meat, um, it's not just about the act of not eating meat, but rather the act of very consciously choosing your food, and very consciously being aware of the food choices around you, etc. So it's not just the act itself, but how it changes your perspective to things, and that can really influence the people around you and influence like how you buy things or how you want to talk about things. And I really think about the whole like children thing as well. I think it is very difficult to think about raising children in today's world. I've seen there's this Reddit thread called Collapse, I think, and it's basically like doomsday. It's like doom scrolling. But I find myself scrolling there a lot lately. And someone did make a thread about how when they see children today that they feel immense like fear for them because you know it's like what's gonna happen to you? You're only like three now. What's gonna happen in 20 years time when you're in the prime of your life, right? How's the world gonna look like then? And I think about that a lot, especially when there are people around me that do want to have children, and they're not very environmentally aware. And I wonder if these people were environmentally aware, would they still want to have children? um yeah, and people always say like, oh, having children is like you can grow, you can like raise them up to be very ethical and moral persons that can contribute to society. But the question is like, you could do it in your own lifetime too, and even if you do raise a child, there's no guarantee that the child would be a good person or turn out the way that any sort of healthy, well adapted, well adjusted adult would, because as a parent there's so many things out of your control. uh, yeah, so that's my opinion on that. So yes, in Singapore we do have a lot of nature around us, but then again it's also a contradiction because we do have a few nature reserves around the island. So one of them is called Dover Forest, and apparently it is being cleared for housing development. So a lot of citizens actually came together to petition, um, like stopping the clearing of Dover Forest, but the government still went ahead anyway and will proceed to clear the forest in the near future. So even though Singapore does have the perception of being a very green city, it is a very manufactured greenness. So it is, green in a way that it looks like nature, but it's kind of not really nature. Yeah. yeah, I love vegan food. I feel like I kind of, have started to really enjoy vegetarian and vegan food. I cook a lot, so I tend to also cook vegetarian food. And the other day, I actually did make a sort of pseudo cream pasta using cashews and oat milk to make the cream, and then cooking mushrooms with caramelized onions to have that kind of smoky flavor for the pasta, and kind of mixing all of that together. And it turned out really amazing. Highly recommend that. Use cashews and oat milk for cream. So yeah. So I feel like okay, like the whole individual action thing. I know a lot of people have have really strong opinions about this individual and kind of corporation responsibility. I agree that a lot of the massive changes have to be made by the people who exert a lot of power. So people who are running corporations, crafting government policies. It's really, really important for leaders to take the lead in this because there's so much that individuals can do. But I do think that what individuals can do is to really like disrupt the system as much as we can in whatever way that we can, and that all these minor disruptions is going to be much more significant than no disruptions at all. So this is something that I learned from reading about anti-capitalism. So the book How to Be Anti-Capitalist in the 21st Century, um, it has the same kind of argument. The author talks about different ways to be anti-capitalist, and there's no correct way per se, but it requires everyone to be in these different strategies to sort of nudge the society out of a capitalistic one into one that's a lot more equal, and one that's a bit more premised on maybe say like socialist or yeah, like socialist principles, etc. um, Regardless of whether you agree with capitalism as an ideology or not, I feel like this approach is really useful in terms of climate action as well. There could be people who are doing like the hard sciences, there could be people who are sort of educating, also people who start to also craft new narratives about us as citizens of the world, etc. And for me as an anthropologist, trained person, I'm really interested in narratives, and I feel like narratives do really have the power to change the way that we see ourselves in the world, and that once you have that shift, um, your lifestyle changes, and people, like, yeah, I just feel like that's really crucial. And I guess that's what I try to do at least, uh, with what I can right now. Obviously, I'm quite limited because I am still in a position of like, yeah, like I don't think I have a lot of influence where I am, but I'm using whatever influence I can to talk about these topics. So I think likewise, all of you can also use whatever influence you have or whatever resources you have to share about similar topics or any sort of causes that you're passionate about, because I think even for me, like a year ago, I never thought that my YouTube would even be a platform where people would be interested in the things that I was interested in. So, it really is a lesson to learn that anyone can really influence their own spheres. Um, yeah. Yes, the film A Life on Our Planet made me cry. And I recently watched this documentary called Chasing Corals. I think it was filmed in 2016, so it was like 5 years ago. Um, yeah, it made me cry as well because the bleaching event was just so heartbreaking. Because like you could literally see the corals dying. Um, and that was really sad, and I think the saddest part is knowing that scientists and researchers, a lot of them went into their fields because they loved nature, like they love nature and they love the environment. But a lot of them sort of just had to document loss, like they had to document their grief a lot. And this is something that I also read about in Elizabeth Colbert's book, the last, I think the sixth extinction. It was really a story of heartbreak as well, because all these researchers, um, they love the animals and they love nature, but going out into their research, they realized that what they had to capture was like the immense loss of life, which is so sad, because I would imagine if I was someone that, went into the field with such a huge love for nature, and to see it just disappear month after month, it would be really deeply depressing. I've not read any Yanis Varoufakis, is that how you pronounce his surname? But I've heard of that name, I think. Yeah. Okay, would I have any siblings? Yes, actually, this is kind of like one of my own, I think, personal pride and joy is that my brother does work in the food tech industry, so he is working in plant-based meat alternatives, and he's also very interested in sustainability. Whereas for my sister, she works in tech, but she has been very interested in sort of sustainability as well, and we all practice plant-based diets at home. So this was like it's kind of difficult for my parents to adapt to, but so far they've been okay with it. Um, they eat their own food sometimes, so if I cook, I would only prepare vegetarian food, but I won't really guilt them for wanting to have meat products on the table, etc. Because I'm not gonna guilt trip them into anything. I also want them to be able to change as they see fit in their own lifestyle. But definitely, we've been able to shift towards a mostly plant-based diet in the past year, which is something I'm super glad, because I thought it would be impossible. I guess especially being in an Asian household where you never really question your diet. Like you kind of just kind of eat. Eating is very important. Yeah, I'm so glad that they're restricting tourists in the coral spots. Yeah, and the glass buildings, that is really a very common sort of impression of Singapore. And one thing that really concerns me is like the urban heat effect. So, more heat is pulled in urban centers that have a lot of these glass buildings, simply because of I think, the heating properties of concrete and glass. So, it's gonna be a lot hotter in Singapore in general. Yeah, and there's gonna be a lot more flash floods. Usually we get flash floods a few times a year. They've been happening a lot more recently, like they've been happening a lot more frequently in Singapore. Not yet to any sort of severe degree, but definitely the frequency has been a lot more, um, and people are kind of freaked out. But it's not as bad as we see in other countries. But I don't want to jinx anything, so I don't know. Yeah, yeah. I feel like, finding joy in cooking was like a huge click for me, because a huge a switch maybe, because I think I was in a state of mind where I used to be super um, doomsday, despairing, and depressed, and I was finding it very hard to find any sort of joy in simple things. But starting to recreate some of my favorite recipes as a vegetarian dish or a vegan dish really helped to bring back some of that joy. Um, and it becomes a lot easier now. is there a book what Singapore is doing and did for increasing greenery in the country? So there is an author that there's a researcher that talks about environmental history in Singapore that's called Timothy Barnett. So let me just show you. So this researcher, he actually is kind of like main the main researcher for, yeah, basically environmental histories in Singapore. Oh, yeah, maybe that'll be fun if I can actually show you my recipes. I don't actually follow recipes, I just kind of go by the flow. So yes, this is the book in response to Chronos. I would say this book details sort of the linear trajectory, the chronology of Singapore's environmental history. So how it was first colonized and how the British Empire used the land, and subsequently how the government took over and sort of started to segregate the land or started to beautify the land, and the sort of political justifications for whatever ways they would, yeah, do up the land. So there is a few chapters I think that's about building a city in a garden, which is a huge kind of marketing publicity thing for Singapore. Oh my god, I just saw the comment about the flood in New Jersey. That's so crazy. I did see some videos of I think New York subways being flooded. And that's crazy to see that. I mean, it's so crazy to see like all these floods in all these places. So the fact is, like, my extended family is from Jakarta, and seeing floods to that degree is pretty common there. So people's homes flood pretty often, and I'm used to that. Like, I'm used to seeing like that scale of floods. But the scary thing for me is like seeing them in all these places that, you know, just that usually floods don't happen. I think that was like the very freaky part for me. Yeah. And I've seen like so many news everywhere about fires and floods. Yeah. Oh, thanks for the comment, Daniel. Yes. So I am very comfortable on paper books or ebooks. I'm fine with either. I don't really have a preference. I like ebooks for their convenience. I do think that the public libraries in Singapore, you can borrow books via an online app, Libby, from the public libraries. So that is very, very convenient, because you can bring just one e-reader with you everywhere. But in terms of paperbacks, they take up a lot of space, but I'm able to focus a lot better when I read paper books. So that is kind of like the main difference for me. Uh, yeah. And also for paperback books, I get to make annotations and share them with people. I can't really do that with library copies that are ebooks. Ecosystems in Singapore are making headway. Oh, Yeah, the news of fires in places have been so scary. I agree. Oh yeah, I feel like especially if you're someone that lives in a place where there's so much wildlife that seems to always be there. And I've seen like some videos of um, I've seen some videos of like the Australian fires like earlier this year, and that was really so upsetting. Seeing the animals struggling was really upsetting, because now I just adopted a kitten, and I have started to feel like a lot for um, yeah, like animals in the wild as well that have been subjected to so much like yeah, like so much pain that they wouldn't be able to cope with or adapt to. Seems like everyone really wants a cooking stream. I'll see whether I can do that. So if the quality of this is alright on my phone, then it would be quite doable for me to do an entire stream in my kitchen, because there's no space on the countertop to bring my laptop and my mic and all that. Yeah. So if this quality is fine, then I might do a live stream cooking next week. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe cooking supper or something. Um, Honestly, I really don't have a preference between ebooks and paper. It really depends on my circumstances. Like if I'm on the go a lot, yeah, having an e-reader helps a lot. But really no preference. Yeah. I feel like sometimes having physical books can be a bit of a burden, because there's just so many of them. Um, and I want to be able to read all of them, but yeah, the classic sort of dilemma. Yeah, the whole city of Jakarta is supposed to sink by 2050. It's so crazy. I mean, the rate of at which it is sinking is kind of startling. It is a bit concerning. Yeah, I, the whole place is sinking like crazy. So I'm kind of worried about that as well. Yeah, I haven't gone back in like 2 years, I think. So it's kind of crazy. Communion with the spirit. That's so interesting. Okay. I would say when I read paper books, it helps me concentrate a lot more, because it is like a physical experience. So I am able to sort of fully immerse myself in the book. Yeah, I mean that's what I enjoy about physical books, I guess. Yeah. Oh, okay. I think my cat just woke up. Okay, let me go bring her over. I think y'all would like to see her. Hi. You sleep well? Mm. This is this Asian pea. Okay, she's just purring on my lap right now. Uh, Yeah, the climate doomer farmer friends. I feel like it's really very. I can totally understand why it's so easy to be um like despairing, and I really empathize with that because it's really like can you see her? Oh wow, okay, she just did a big stretch in front of the camera. Oh, hi. Oh, that was a big yawn. That was a big yawn. Hi. Whoosh. Where are you going? Where are you going? Oh. Okay, she's just on my table now. So yeah, okay, like back to the doomer thing. I feel like it has to really start from understanding that doom and despair won't go anywhere, and it's gonna be very paralyzing. And something that really woke me up was that when you're despairing and you're sort of stuck in that sort of s- static time zone or static time frame, you won't get anything done. And it's better to be in a place where you are actually generating stuff. So I think that's one thing that I am trying to embody as much as I can, is how do I be as generative as possible. And this is something that a lot of nature books have really taught me. Yeah, like being ecological means being in a generative relationship with one another and with the environment. I'm so sorry about my cat. She's just walking everywhere. Yeah, so to me, that was really how I wanted to move towards ideas about degrowth and slow living, because degrowth isn't about like reducing things. Um it's really about like finding value in other ways, finding value in things that are circular, in things that are sort of in a partnership that you might not see excess outcomes or results from, but rather that the act of care itself, that the act of cycles itself is what um, is worth the whole effort in the end, rather than having to see very um, tangible like profits and all that. So that's how I sort of have moved towards the idea of degrowth. So it really, I don't know whether that would help with your doomer farmer friends, because it's always better to be in a generative position rather than to be paralyzed and sort of very passively receiving things, or passively sort of reliving your trauma over and over again. Because I think from a psychological point of view, you don't want to be stuck in that cycle of trauma. You don't want to be reliving the past or reliving a static kind of predetermined future that you actually have the potential to change to some degree. So that is how I would answer that. Yeah. Yeah, Agent P is her name. Yeah. Is she was named she was a rescue, and my friend was fostering a bunch of kittens, and so she named her Agent P because I think she's very inquisitive, and she's always like trying to sniff everything, trying to investigate things. So that's why she's called an agent. She's always doing secret missions, right? Are you still sleeping? Yeah? Yeah? Ah, ah, ah. No, don't bite me, don't bite me, okay? Ah, ah, ah. Why are you biting me? Yeah, that's so great. I'm so glad that your friend is doing this food production project thing. Yeah, I've been thinking whether I should, kind of move into food production and be a farmer or something. I kind of feel like that sometimes. Wow, I'm getting really close to the camera. Hi. Oh, showing everyone your teeth. Wow. I guess she really likes the attention. So what's my favorite book? I don't really have a favorite book. I think a lot of people have asked me this question, but it's really hard for me to answer because, yeah, Asian P is actually from Phineas and Ferb. So yeah, that's actually the reference, you're right. Yeah, so I guess it really depends the books that have really impacted me. But I would say there are different points for me when it comes to climate consciousness. It was Naomi Klein's This Changes Everything. That was the book that really did it for me in terms of like how urgent the whole thing was. Um, yeah, she seems to really enjoy the camera. Yeah, okay, that's a really good point about whether these kinds of individual things lack an aspect relating to the community. I agree. I feel like that's kind of like the major issue that I myself also face in climate activism. A lot of the things that we push for are very, very much individual actions. Um, and I'm still in the process of figuring out like other than like political things like like voting for certain like representatives and eating more sustainably, is there some in between that we can band together and achieve, without being overly sort of having to deal so much, having to rely too much on like corporations and do all this work for us. Because I've been wanting to work in, yeah, maybe the sustainability sector, or like even a sort of green sector, and I am not so, I don't know, it seems very strange to be doing like market analysis and market research and all these consulting things. Yeah. At the same time, being a climate storyteller or like being a climate educator seems very fluffy as well. So I feel like this is a whole genre of work and labor that's very undefined. And we're all trying to find our way, I think. Really. Uh, where is she now? Okay, she's hiding in the corner. So I think I might go soon. I think someone did mention that when the cat comes on, it's time for me to go. It's true because I have to feed her, um, and I will feed her in about like 10 minutes time, so I still have some time. Yeah, and thanks everyone for joining me in the stream. I'm so sorry about the technical difficulties from the start. I hope that it was still kind of like a good enough stream for everyone. Yeah, so thanks again for all the comments. I really, really enjoyed reading everyone's comments. Um, yeah, and I'm really glad that I was able to talk about these issues because I know in previous live streams, a lot of people actually were very concerned about these issues. They were really concerned about the environment, very concerned about like eco anxiety. A lot of people were just like losing a lot of motivation and inspiration. And I feel that a lot. I definitely feel a lot of like yeah, I really feel a lot of this like anxiety a lot, and I feel like slowly moving towards uh kind of a approach that's centered in hope and aspirations and inspiration. I really hope I can continue that trajectory further um, with my channel. Because I used to never understand why activists were trying so hard to be happy, but now I kind of do. I kind of understand that joy and pleasure and general flourishing is what is the most convincing and persuasive for everyone. So yeah, and so I hope everything that we talked about was interesting, and thanks again, oh my god, thank you all for the really sweet comments. I really, really enjoyed today's live stream, and I really enjoyed learning from y'all as well, like having all your recommendations and sort of just chatting with everyone. So yes, uh yeah, I maybe I'll work on setting up like a community tab or something, and maybe setting up a virtual book club in the future. We'll see what I can establish with whatever time I have and whatever energy I have left over. But yes, thank you all and good night, and I'll see you all next week. Hopefully, I'll be able to do a cooking stream as very popularly requested. Okay, so I hope you're all having a good evening wherever you are, or whatever time zone you're in. Hope you're having a good day. If not, I hope you get a time to rest well, treat yourself well, kindly, compassionately as well. And yeah, I hope everyone will have a great week ahead. Have a nice weekend, and yeah, take care. Yeah. Okay, bye. It's time for Asian Peas meal time, so